Imagine living on a floating wooden city with 27,000 people and nowhere to go, yet almost nobody gets sick from it. That was the daily reality on Zhenghe's Ming treasure ships, the closest thing the 15th century ever saw to a mobile fortress at sea. These weren't cozy little caravels like Columbus sailed. This was an entire supply chain of giant warships, grain ships, water tenders, and kitchen ships, all moving together like a city that had cut its anchors and decided to roam the Indian Ocean. Now picture what that means in numbers. More than the population of London at the time, all sleeping, eating, sweating, and yes, producing waste every single day. Here's the crazy part. European fleets a century later were ravaged by scurvy, dysentery, and typhoid, sometimes losing over half their crews to disease, while large-scale outbreaks on Zhenghe's voyages are almost non-existent in the records. Somehow, this floating fortress handled mountains of filth, foul water, and cramped bodies without turning into a plague ship. How did ancient Chinese sailors pull that off, when later Europeans with cannons and charts still couldn't keep their men alive? To answer that, we have to climb down into the guts of the ship, into the compartments, the dark corners near the waterline, the pots, the barrels, and the habits that quietly kept everyone alive. Start with the most awkward question: where did the waste actually go? 27,000 humans generate an estimated 13 to 20 tons of waste every single day. That's like dumping a few truckloads of sewage into a wooden maze of decks and cabins. With no pumps, no plastic pipes, no modern toilets. If they got this wrong, the treasure fleet would have become a disease bomb. Ancient Chinese shipbuilders had one invisible advantage: watertight compartments. Archaeological evidence from ships of that tradition shows hulls divided into many sealed sections, separated by bulkheads. Technology Europe wouldn't widely adopt until centuries later. That meant a treasure ship wasn't one big, sloshing barrel. It was a stack of zones. Cargo here, living quarters there, work areas somewhere else, and crucially, places that could be set aside for sanitation. If one area became foul or contaminated, the stench and the germs didn't automatically spread through the entire hull. Now imagine walking along the side of one of these ships while it's underway. You'd see small openings low on the hull, just above the waterline, where the sea races past. The simplest and most likely solution was also one they almost certainly used: direct side discharge. Waste goes in a pot or bucket, the sailor carries it to a designated opening, tips it out, and the movement of the ship plus the ocean current whisks it away before it can linger. It's similar in principle to later European ships' heads at the bow, but integrated into a much more compartmentalized hull. At sea, while the fleet was moving, this was brutally efficient. The water washed everything down and away. The real problem came when the ship stopped. Zhenghe's fleet didn't just drift randomly. It anchored for weeks in crucial ports like Malacca, Calicut, and Hormuz. You can't just dump tons of human waste into a busy harbor and expect local rulers to smile and keep trading. Pollute a port's water, and your diplomatic mission becomes a biological attack. So at anchor, the fleet needed a second line of defense: collection. Archaeologists studying pottery from shipwrecks connected to the same shipbuilding tradition have found deep vessels with wide mouths that don't quite fit ordinary food or water storage. Some researchers suggest that at least part of this onboard ceramic ecosystem was used to collect liquid and solid waste inside cabins or designated spots, then empty it in a controlled way. Run the math again. If 27,000 people produce 13 to 20 tons of waste daily, and you assign one cleaner per 100 people, you get an estimated 270 crew members whose main job could have been sanitation. That sounds insane, until you realize this fleet also carried physicians, interpreters, artisans, soldiers, and specialized roles we barely remember. Dedicating a few hundred men to hauling waste, cleaning spaces, and managing pots is perfectly plausible at that scale. And then there's the third, almost shocking possibility: recycling. For thousands of years on land, Chinese farmers used human and animal manure as fertilizer. On shipwrecks from the same maritime world, jars with mung beans and soybeans have been found. Some even showed signs of germination. That hints at another layer. Grow food on board using waste, very carefully, as part of a nutrient cycle. This would have been the riskiest tactic. Fermenting waste in a confined hull can produce unbearable smells and real disease hazards if mishandled. But for a civilization already comfortable with night soil agriculture on land, adapting some version of that logic at sea isn't far-fetched, especially in small, controlled setups feeding sprout cultivation. In 15th century Europe, scurvy and waterborne diseases were legendary killers. Voyages could lose half or more of their crews to disease alone. Rotting gums, bloody mouths, fevers, relentless diarrhea, that was normal. On Zheng He's ships, the records show deaths, but not the catastrophic, disease-driven collapses Europeans later endured. One of the quiet reasons is that Ming sailors turned every drink of water into an improvised medical treatment, without knowing the microbiology behind it. They drank tea. Tea wasn't a luxury. Accounts of the voyages mention tea and rice as a routine part of meals. What matters most isn't just the tea leaves, it's the act of brewing. To make tea, you boil water. Boiling kills many of the bacteria and parasites that cause dysentery and other gut diseases. So picture this. In a rocking wooden cabin on the eve of a storm, a sailor steadies a clay stove, gets a fire going, and boils yet another pot of water. To him, it's just the habit of a lifetime. To modern science, it's a powerful sanitation system masquerading as culture. Europeans, by contrast, typically drank stored fresh water as is. Whatever microbes were in that barrel went straight into their bodies. Tea added a second layer of protection too. Mild vitamin C and antioxidant content, topped with the antimicrobial punch of common spices cooked with food. Ginger and garlic, for example, which we now know have real antibacterial properties. The sailors didn't need lab reports. Centuries of traditional medicine and kitchen practice had already taught them that ginger for the stomach and garlic for heat and bad airs worked. Now imagine descending into a dim corner of the hold, the air thick with tar, sweat, and smoke. In that gloom, someone has lined up clay pots, each covered with a damp cloth. Lift the edge and you see pale tips pushing up. Then, a day or two later, bright, tender shoots. On a ship of wood and rope, those sprouts might be the only fresh green thing anyone sees for weeks. Every bowl of congee or rice that got a handful of sprouts wasn't just tastier, it was a dose of life. Europeans wouldn't systematically connect citrus with scurvy prevention until the 18th century. Ming sailors were eating vitamin C on purpose 3 centuries earlier, guided not by controlled experiments, but by experience and observation. Once you view the treasure fleet not as one huge ship, but as an ecosystem, everything clicks. Records and archaeological evidence show that Zheng He's expeditions relied on a mix of ship types: treasure ships for prestige and command, grain ships to haul rice and grains, water ships to lug barrels and jars, horse carriers, and even dedicated kitchen or provision ships. Route planning was also part of sanitation. Research on Zheng He's navigation patterns shows that the fleet followed a kind of freshwater corridor. Certain ports were known refilling stations, where rulers actually sent their own men to deliver clean water, trading it for porcelain and silk. That meant less desperation, fewer times when sailors had to drink marginal or brackish water, and fewer opportunities for disease to sneak in through a contaminated well. Waste didn't just vanish below decks, it was quietly managed by routines. Specific crew would have been responsible for cleaning latrine areas, hauling full pots to discharge points, and scrubbing surfaces with seawater. Watertight bulkheads meant wash water, spills, and filth could be contained to particular areas and flushed or aired out without turning the entire hull into a damp, unhealthy cave. This is where the comparison with Europe becomes brutally clear. Later European ships often had a single, less clearly partitioned interior, water taken in barrels but not routinely boiled for drinking, almost no fresh vegetables at sea, and limited use of antibacterial spices. Historical accounts record scurvy killing huge fractions of crews on long voyages. A mortality pattern Zheng He's fleet simply did not mirror. So how did all these threads, toilets, tea, sprouts, barrel design, route planning, come together to keep a floating fortress from choking on its own waste? In the galley, someone tends brick stoves, Water from the central jars goes into big iron kettles. Soon, steam fills the air as tea is brewed in batch after batch. Rice cooks into thin congee. A ladle of fermented beans or a bit of pickled vegetable goes into each bowl, and here and there, a handful of mung bean sprouts adds crunch and a faint grassy sweetness. As the sun rises, cleaners scrub designated washing areas with seawater, ladled straight from ports cut into the hull, letting gravity and ship motion help pull everything back out. On some days when the fleet approaches a known freshwater port, officers check charts that mark exactly where safe water can be found, ready to trade cargo for barrels of clean supply. All of this looks mundane. None of it feels like advanced technology from the deck. But when you add it up, it's a closed-loop health system. Waste kept moving, clean water constantly refreshed and boiled, vitamin C renewed in a dark corner of the hold, and antibacterial ingredients woven into daily meals. Centuries later, when Western historians first wrote grand narratives of the Age of Discovery, Zheng He appeared in the background as the admiral with the huge ships. A curiosity, a side note. The deeper genius, the quiet systems that kept 27,000 people alive on wooden fortresses without modern medicine or plumbing, barely got a mention. Ancient Chinese sailors survived on a brutal, dangerous ocean, not because they had one magical invention, but because they respected the boring details. Where the waste goes, how the water's boiled, which seeds sprout in the dark, and how a hull is sliced into zones so filth and freshness don't mix. They turned a fleet into a living organism, one that digested waste, circulated clean water, and regenerated nutrients every single day. Today, when engineers design closed life support systems for submarines, polar stations, or even Mars habitats, they use modern plastics, electronics, and filtration membranes. But they are chasing the same goal. How do you keep a crowded, isolated human community from drowning in its own waste? 600 years ago, Zheng He's crews were already running a primitive version of that experiment, on rolling decks and creaking beams, with nothing but wood, clay, herbs, and discipline. So the next time you hear about treasure ships, don't just picture gold and porcelain. Picture the unglamorous side. Cleaners hauling pots at dawn, tea kettles hissing, damp sacks of mung beans carefully turned each day, and small openings in the hull where yesterday's waste disappears into the roaring sea. That's how ancient Chinese sailors handled waste on a floating fortress. Not by avoiding it, but by folding it into a system so effective that history barely noticed it was there. If you want more stories that peel back the glossy surface of history and show you the hidden systems that actually kept people alive, make sure you stick around, subscribe, and share this video with someone who still thinks ancient sailors just got lucky out on the open sea.